How to manage risk at scale without slowing innovation.
Sure. So, like many organizations, it was very manual, time consuming. There was a lot of repetitive steps in it that we always thought, this is silly that we're doing this. There must be a better way.
It was literally infinite scroll. And it was just like we were scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and the number of folders and files were just endless. So
I think the real aha moment was Zania was when we gave it a prompt, it actually gave very meaningful results and things that we could have done by ourselves in record speed. It was just night and day how the agent can pick up controls we didn't realize were implemented. And we started like, wow, this exists. This is so cool. We didn't know about this. Like for an analogy, I think the AI agent is like a really, really top tier intern. And it's really good at those types of tasks, right? Discovering data, collecting data.
hey folks, I'm Shruti, founder and CEO of Zania. Today we're diving into a topic that's top of mind for every leader in tech and finance. How to manage risk at scale without slowing innovation. And we have the perfect guest to discuss this. We're joined by Justin Garlick from the risk and compliance team at Plaid. For Plaid, a platform that connects millions of people to their financial lives, their approach to security risk isn't just academic, it's existential. I've been incredibly impressed by Justin, you and the other folks on the GRC team at Plaid. You all are really thoughtful and thorough, and yet you've built processes that thrive in a fast-paced environment. Today, Justin is here to share his wisdom on building a world-class risk program and how his team uses AI to become risk superhumans. Justin, a huge welcome. So could you tell our listeners a bit about your journey to Plaid and how you got to this point in your risk career?
Yeah, sure. So here's a little bit about me. Born and raised in the suburbs of Chicago. When I was 17, I left home. I went to school at the University of Auckland in New Zealand. There, I graduated with a Bachelor of Business and a Bachelor of Science. On my science degree, I majored in computer science, and then on my business degrey, I did information systems and innovation entrepreneurship. Out of school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so naturally, I gravitated towards consulting, used to try a little bit of everything. So I was in consulting for a little over 4 years, in which I predominantly worked in the financial services and the technology industries. Fortunately for me, those two skills merged really well with my current company, Plaid, in fintech. And I guess the rest is history. So I've been at Plaid for a little over 4 years now, doing multiple initiatives, all the way from vendor risk management, audit, sales enablement. And what we're here to talk about today, risk management, which I've been doing for about the last 2 years.
Wow, great experience. You've pretty much done most things that a GRC person would dream of, being a consultant in a high stakes environment and then leading so many programs at Plaid. So can you paint a picture for us of the GRC team at Plaid? How do you all think about managing first party risk for a platform that's so central to the financial ecosystem?
Sure. So within the security org, there are multiple vertical teams, right? Security GRC just being one of them. We have multiple other sister teams that help act as our security subject matter experts, depending on the domain we're trying to analyze. In regards to the security risk and the importance to Plaid, it's absolutely paramount, right? We have a lot of different stakeholders in our ecosystem, whether it's our customers, our data partners, our end consumers, and all of them need to trust us. And as part of building that trust is about maintaining a solid risk foundation.
Awesome. So what are some of the values that you all have on the GRC team while you guide the company through risk and compliance?
Sure. So I think it's really important to be pragmatic about risk management. So in any organization, I have a strong belief that security should enable the business, right? It's about letting them have the data points at hand to make the right decisions, right prioritizations, and really making sure that we get the narrative right, so to speak. I think as part of doing that, it really does enable us to make great products that are secure, products that actually serve a purpose to our end consumers and really solve some real world issues.
That makes a lot of sense. So tell me how the risk program has evolved at Plaid. How were you doing risk assessments before you started using Zania's AI agents? And what was that world like?
Sure. So like many organizations, it was very manual. Time consuming. There was a lot of repetitive steps in it that we always thought, this is silly that we're doing this. There must be a better way. The tools we use are pretty generic tools. G Suite, Jira. I mean, there's various workflow tools you can use, various frameworks you can use as well. But in general, we knew that this just wouldn't scale. We needed a smarter solution. And around that same time, AI agents, LLMs, they're all getting very, very popular and they're showing a lot of promise. So we thought, hey, let's check it out. And so we decided to partner with Zania and build some great tools here.
So, what was the tipping point that made you overcome some of the hesitations that you might have had around, hey, are AI agents, for example, going to take my job away, or are they going to be able to give me the control, the accuracy, the security, so on and so forth? You know, all of the usual concerns that folks have before they add AI agents to the team. So, what was that for you? Like, did you have any of those fears? And how did you decide that the benefits were, making more sense as opposed to those fears that you might have had?
Sure. And yeah, absolutely. We had a ton of fears, right? And that's very natural to any sort of changing technology. I don't think that should necessarily discourage anyone from exploring them. I think the best approach there is to really try to mitigate against those. In regards to like the AI taking over human jobs, I think that is a valid concern. I would think fortunately at Plaid, that wasn't really a concern, at least not for our team for this initiative, just because the scalability of AI was just absolutely needed, right? We couldn't keep hiring staff. It's not a sustainable solution to solve this volume issue. In regards to like some of the other risks, like the security risk of it, even I guess like privacy implications, like all those things you can mitigate against those, right? So at Plaid, we have a very defined vendor onboarding process that we use, and like many other organizations, Zania is a third party. When you onboard them, you got to understand what data you're sharing, the access permissions, all those things you can mitigate against them as long as you have those checks and balances in place.
So when you first piloted Zania's AI agents, what were those initial aha moments which helped you decide that going an agentic route was the way to go forward?
Sure. Yeah. And that's a great question. So I think even taking a step back, right? Maybe 18 months ago, this technology, it really didn't exist, at least not in this fashion. And so we shortlisted maybe about 20 vendors. So multiple trial and error. I think the real aha moment was Zania was when we gave it a prompt, it actually gave very meaningful results and things that we could have done by ourselves in record speed. It was just night and day how quickly you can do like threat intelligence, for example, or even parsing our control narratives to understand like what is applicable for these corresponding threats. And just like, again, the speed was just so shocking.
Yeah. So Plaid uses a modified version of FAIR for doing risk assessments. For our listeners who might not be familiar with FAIR, can you briefly explain what FAIR is and why you chose to use it and why you further chose to adapt it rather than implementing a strict version with, millions of Monte Carlo simulations?
Sure. So I think, even before we get into FAIR, right? So when we think about risk management and the risk management lifecycle, I break up into 4 phases, right? The initial identification, the analysis, the treatment, and then the ultimate monitoring of that risk. In that 4-phased approach, that second phase is analysis. And that's really where FAIR plays a role, right? So FAIR is a framework you use to analyze risk. I think it's fairly old, maybe 20 years when it first was published. But the idea is that it was supposed to provide a quantitative approach to risk analysis, right? So when you go to your board or your boss and you say, hey, we have this risk, it's very hard to talk apples to apples. And so what FAIR was trying to solve for was giving a quantitative value so that they can budget and plan and decide is it a good risk to mitigate or accept. That's great at all. And to your point, you already alluded to Monte Carlo simulations to get that actual figure. It is very, very expensive time-wise for an organization to do that for each of your risk. And so I think any organization needs to understand the risk maturity and where they are in that journey. So in the context of Plaid, instead of taking that heavy-handed quantitative approach, we did modify it to fit our business to be somewhat more qualitative in nature. That not only gave us speed, but it still met the purpose of what we needed it for. And so that's what we use FAIR for. I'm happy to dive in a little bit deeper on how we modified it. But in short, right, when you look at FAIR, Effectively, you just deriving risk scores. At the very top, you have a parent node, which is the actual risk score. Below that, the two child nodes are likelihood and impact. Again, very traditional risk thinking methodology. And then within likelihood, you then break it down further into threat vector frequency and then vulnerability. And then the two children of vulnerability is threat actor capability and your control strength. And then on the other side of the equation, the impact is when you're looking at forms of losses. Again, this is all well defined as part of the FAIR methodology. I mean, I am imploring listeners to look at that themselves. But within each of those nodes, you can then define how you want to measure very high to very low.
So, what was the process like of taking this complex methodology and training AI agents to follow that methodology and have quality that's equal to how, a really expert risk analyst would perform risk assessments?
Sure. So where we really found success at Plaid was for each of those different parent nodes and the children nodes, we had the best results when we had a dedicated agent to effectively be the expert for understanding that. So for example, the threat vector frequency, there's a lot of threat intelligence built into that specific agent in that node to be quote unquote right, the best at doing that job. Similarly, there are certain situations where you can actually just hard code things that you know are going to be consistent, right? So the actual calculations we use to derive the risk scores, the children to the parent score, you can hard code that in a matrix. And finding that right balance is where we found the most success and what I would recommend.
Yes, that's really interesting. So the nodes that need deep research or the nodes that need more external deep research versus more internal deep research, because they have different pieces of context and different methodologies. It's a great idea to have different AI agents work on the individual nodes or pieces of the FAIR assessment. And then like a parent orchestrator takes in all of their input and aggregates the results to stitch them together. That makes a lot of sense. So one of the biggest fears that professionals usually have with AI, especially in the enterprise GRC space where the accuracy, security, reliability really matters, is the black box problem. How do you mean control and visibility, ensuring the human's always in charge? So how does your team work with the agents to refine their outputs and to make sure they become smarter over time?
Sure. I think with any AI solution, whether it's risk management or anything else, I think it's very important that we still have human intervention and review. I don't want to necessarily AI is a silver bullet. We should, and we really should, and we do have human review in all these steps. In regards to actually training the model, so what we built with Zania was a user interface that's very easy to use. And we're effectively, for each of these different calculations, the end user, right, Plaid in this case, would just type in the feedback in real time, and then we would end that session to reinforce the training. I think with anything, that black box problem with AI is always going to exist. And I think the ways you mitigate that is as you iterate on your actual model, your agents, to try to isolate the variables of what you're actually modifying and trying to see A to B as a result of the changes you make.
So Zania also shows traceability, like its confidence scores and the way it derived the decision by showing source citations and so on. How important do you think it is for a human analyst to moderate and review what the AI is doing? And in what use cases would you think AI can become truly autonomous versus not?
Sure. So I think it's really important to have that active feedback as you go through the cycle, right? If the AI is making a claim, you should be able to validate where that claim is coming from. One, so you can first understand it better. And then two, if you need to modify it or update that source, so you have easy access to do so. Training is just going to be a reality of any model you use. And any ways you can reduce cycles there is going to be better for everyone in that process.
How is using Zania's AI agents fundamentally changed the way your team approaches the work? Is it more around handling more risks now, or more consistency, more speed? Like, how has it affected your program?
Yeah, I think honestly all of the above. So we initially went in for speed, but as we were using the tool more and more, we realized that consistency improved. It was also a great discovery tool. So a ton of documentation and organization or control stack, and things change constantly as a result of just being a fast moving company. It's next to impossible for any individual to keep up. That's just the reality. And so again, back to that aha moment, right? The agent can pick up controls we didn't realize were implemented. It fights it, and we can look at it and go back to the control and be like, hey, is this actually true? Because you obviously want to minimize hallucinations. That's just a reality of any AI tool. But you validate that just to be sure, and you start like, wow, this exists. This is so cool. We didn't know about this.
So, in the practical sense, there's human analysts and then there's AI agents working in parallel. So, what does the division of work look like right now? Which tasks has the AI taken over, and where are the senior analyst judgments still absolutely essential?
Sure. So I think for analogy, I think the AI agent is like a really, really top tier intern, and it's really good at those types of tasks, right? Discovering data, collecting data, aggregating data, and it's where the senior analyst then goes in to actually validate and review that information.
And how has this impacted the team development, especially for more junior analysts? Are you seeing them ramp up faster now that they can learn from a trained AI that does the first level of assessments?
Yeah, it's definitely a great training tool for our junior analysts. It's so effectively the way we use it, Zania, is you give it a prompt with some leading indicators of what you think the risk may be. And as a result, it spits out what it believes the risk is on that prompt. And that's a really good tool for like almost like ping ponging ideas back and forth, where sometimes the junior analyst can speak to a senior analyst for their thoughts. This initial triaging will help them get on the right path to think about, oh, I didn't think about that angle or the implications of this.
So what are some of the key metrics you track to measure success of the risk program, and how has that evolved over time before and after using AI agents?
Sure. So I think a big one is, again, that time component, the SLAs, and how long it takes us to actually analyze a risk and give an informed opinion with recommendations to the business. Where that sits in your organization obviously depends on the maturity of your program and the bandwidth of the team, all that stuff. But I think any team could define those SLAs and measure the time it takes to complete them.
Yeah, and how has this changed? Are you thinking of reducing the SLA, or it's the same, but you're able to handle more risks?
Right. So we're looking to reduce the SLA in this case. I think risk intake is just going to increase, especially in this evolving world where AI can be used both by the bad actors and the good guys.
So beyond the speed and consistency, have there been any other unexpected benefits? Like maybe AI surface some novel risks or novel threat intel information, or maybe like some unseen gaps in controls that you might have observed?
Yeah, I think the two ones that immediately come to mind are just a sheer discovery of the AI, right? So the agents can parse through tons and tons of data that a human just simply can't do. And similarly, the recommendations that the AI give have always been surprising to me. I think that's also the same sort of ability to parse a lot of information, right? You can easily go to very specific niche tools and look at the best practices for how to implement these tools, which can easily be overlooked if a developer is trying to quickly meet an SLA to get something working.
Yeah, I remember when you all were onboarding, when you were showing the data that you used to make the assessments, which is what Zania is trained on. It was literally infinite scroll. And it was just like we were scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and the number of folders and files were just endless. So cannot imagine how a human would be able to mentally map all of that out. It just seemed really, really, tiring to the brain to pass through so much data.
Exactly it.
Makes sense. So looking ahead, what's the next frontier? How do you see the broader GRC processes evolving over the next couple of years with AI agents being a partner on the team as well?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, right, risk management, I think in 4 phases at the moment. We're really honing in on the AI use case for that second phase, the analysis. I think AI can be used in any of the 4 phases, but where I'm the most excited for is in that first phase, right, the identification. So when we think about a risk, right, a risk from a Venn diagram point of view, right, You have threats on one side of the circle, and on the other side of the circle, you have vulnerabilities. Where those two overlap, that's where you have a risk. At the moment, the risk intake process is reactive, right? Usually an employee notices something, they say, hey, can I get your thoughts on this? When in reality, I don't see why there isn't a good reason why you couldn't just implement AI agents on the threat side, as well as continuously monitoring the vulnerability side and proactively identifying anytime there's an overlap, notifying and creating a risk ticket to be analyzed.
And what about the greater GRC program? Things like controls or remediation, evidence collection, third-party risk. How do you see those work streams benefit from AI agents? Which ones would you be more optimistic about, and which ones would you be skeptical about?
Sure. So I personally think the vendor management use case is a better one. I think there are other ones for the actual treatment of risks, following up. I think all that can be done. I don't know if you necessarily need AI to do that. It could probably improve it, but I can't still just generic automation workflows addressing a lot of those issues. The thing with vendor management where I see a lot of promises, the way I see it is that in today's world, a lot of companies are specializing in certain use cases. At the end of the day, it's a lot quicker to usually buy things than to build things. And I think that's just a general trend we see. And as part of that, you need to do a lot of due diligence on your vendors, right? It's the supply chain problem. It's just year over year, it's getting worse and worse. From a bad actor point of view, it's much better to compromise a supplier, which has a backdoor into 20 other customers than trying to target the customer directly. And so as part of that, the organization should be doing due diligence on their customers, right? On their vendors. Any vendor you have is effectively an extension of your business. And so as part of getting that confidence in that, you need to review their security collateral. And that could be a very time consuming process, especially if you have hundreds, thousands of vendors in some cases. And so I think it's a very good use case to point these same risk agent models towards the diligence documents to understand, one, are they meeting our expectations? And two, in the event that there is a breach around that threat intel side of things, are we notified timely of this so we can quickly triage and see the impact?
So for the GRC leaders listening who are on the fence about AI, what's some pieces of advice you'd give them to get started? Where can they get started? How can they get started? If they're thinking of using AI, should they straight away start using AI agents, or maybe they should start with something simpler? What are some of the things that they should evaluate about the ROI versus how they are going to be automating it?
Sure. I think in general, you should at least always be considered an organization, right? I think it is the reality of the environment we work in now. AI is here to stay. I think for it to be effective, you need to have a very realistic expectation of your current risk management capabilities. I think there's a number of frameworks you can use, whether it's like NIST, there's so many other, there's probably already someone use at your organization where you can figure out what is our maturity from like a 1 to a 5. What is the current state? Where do we want to be? And that's true for all parts of the risk management lifecycle. Again, I think if they haven't tried it yet, it's worth trying it. And if you see some promise in it, understanding what foundational needs you need there, right? Whether it's your knowledge base, whether you have the control information to give to your agents.
Yeah. So if folks were to get started, what are some of the metrics that they should think about? You mentioned speed, consistency. Should they expect a ramp up? How should they think about implementing AI agents from zero to the production phase?
Sure. So I think, and again, it varies on multiple factors, but I think a good starting point is when you first do this initial POC, you should immediately see like 0 to 30, right? There should be some clear value there. It's not going to be perfect. And I don't necessarily think perfect is where you should be striving for when you implement these solutions. Again, I think the North Star is you got to figure out, like, is this still good ROI for you and your team? And I just really, really being pragmatic about that. It does take time to calibrate it. It does take time to build it. But as long as you are seeing that ROI and that vision of where you can go with it, I think it's worth investing in.
Great. So Justin, you've had an incredible career. You've been a consultant. You worked at Plaid, and you guys have a really sophisticated GRC program. You've touched pretty much all aspects of GRC. you're really technical. How did you shape your career? Were you, self motivated to learn? If so, how did you learn? Like, how did you think about shaping your career? And what's next for you? How do you see your own career evolving? So it's a two-step question around how you've read so far. If you have any advice to share with folks who also want to follow a similar path, and what do you think is the path from here? What would you like to learn, and how would you keep up with this new era where AI agents are going to be a good partner to the GRC team?
Sure. So I guess my personal mantra is stay curious. I've always been a curious person. New technologies excite me. I don't think we should shy away from them. In regards to the future of AI in this workspace, in the analysis component of it, I would love to see where we can go with MCP servers. I think that would solve a lot of the issues that we see in the knowledge-based problem, where you're contextualizing things as the agent works through them. I also think there's a lot of opportunity, again, in the identification phase, right, to be very proactive and quick to explore these risks as they're happening in real time. Those are just my two personal hobbies that I'm passionate about at the moment as it relates to risk management.
And how was the shift from being a consultant to an in-house GRC expert? Because a lot of people find that difficult. Like, how did you find that role? Was it hard initially, or do you think it was quite translatable?
Sure. So at that point in my life, I'm really like a super person here, but it was a good change, right? Consulting, for anyone who's a consultant, it's a lot of travel. It's challenging to really be a part of your local community when literally half the time you're not there because you're traveling for work. So at that point in my life, where I was ready to settle down, take a little slower pace. In regards to the Plaid opportunity, I was very lucky, right? It really just blended my two worlds together, working in the financial services space and the technology space. It was almost silly not to take it. So, but it is definitely a learning curve, right? Just transition from being the advisor to having, so to speak, more skin in the game, right? Being that boots on the ground person that you're not going to leave after the project's over.
Awesome, Justin. It was really, really awesome to have you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights and wisdom. I'm sure the viewers will really love watching the show. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.